In the flickering neon twilight of Xylos Station, where desperation hung thicker than the recycled air, Elias Wrench, deep space salvager turned reluctant bounty hunter, muttered a vow into the grime-slicked calm receiver pressed to his ear. I don't care if she's the ghost of the galactic emperor. I will bring this memory thief in, or my name isn't Elias Wrench, and I'll finally clear my tab with Vork. He stared across the crowded, refuse-strewn alley at the figure known only by the bounty puck's designation, Quinn Oculus, a whisper in the data streams, accused of pilfering the entire identity of a sector dignitary. The shadows clung to her, yet there was an unnatural stillness about her, an almost imperceptible shimmer at the edges of her form, as if reality itself hesitated in her presence. He didn't know then that this chase was more than just another score, that Quinn Oculus was a key to a lock he didn't even know existed, and that her very being hummed with the echoes of countless other nows. Elias lunged from the alcove, his magnetic cuffs primed. All right, Oculus, show's over. Let's not make this any messier than it needs to be. His voice, usually laced with a boisterous confidence, held a slightly frayed edge tonight. This bounty felt different, the intel thin, the target elusive to an almost supernatural degree. Quinn didn't startle, didn't flinch. She turned, her movements fluid, economical. Her face was difficult to read, her large, dark eyes absorbing the chaotic light of the alley without reflection. She was Chirelian. He knew that much from the sparse briefing, a species known for their unnerving composure and some peculiar biological traits. One of those traits became immediately apparent as Elias closed the distance. A low thrum resonated from her, not quite a sound, more a pressure in the air, making the fillings in his teeth ache. His approach faltered for a microsecond. Playing hard to get, huh? He quipped, trying to regain his swagger. I get it, nobody likes ending up in a detention cell. Quinn remained silent, a silence that was not empty, but pregnant with an unrateable weight. It was, he would later learn, a Chirelian form of intense observation, a silent parsing of intent. As he made his final rush, she moved with a speed that belied her calm demeanor. Her hand, slender and pale, darted out, not in a strike, but to brush his outstretched arm. A cold shock, sharp and sudden, radiated up his limb. His muscles seized, his arm dropping uselessly to his side, the magnetic cuffs clattering to the ferrocrete. Paralyzing touch. The briefing had mentioned it, but experiencing it was another matter entirely. Clever, he grunted, trying to shake off the rapidly spreading numbness. But I'm not a one-trick pony. He fended with his good arm, then kicked, aiming to sweep her legs. She sidestepped with uncanny grace, the air around her seeming to ripple faintly. That shimmer again. Then, a focused, high-pitched whine, almost too quick to register, erupted from her direction, striking the wall beside Elias's head. A small crater of pulverized plasteel appeared where his ear had been moments before. Sonic emitter. Defensive. Precise. Okay. Elias breathed, a genuine, if slightly manic grin spreading across his face. Definitely not boring. This was the exuberance that often got him into trouble, and sometimes, just sometimes, out of it. Before he could press his attack, or Quinn could further demonstrate her formidable arsenal, the alley entrance was blocked by two hulking figures in dark, featureless armor. Their very presence radiated a chilling malevolence. They weren't station security. These were new players, and their focus was entirely on Quinn Oculus. The asset will come with us. One of them boomed, his voice distorted by a vocalizer, flat and devoid of emotion. Asset, not prisoner or fugitive. Elias glanced at Quinn. Her expression hadn't changed, but the quality of her silence shifted, becoming sharper, like the edge of a drawn blade. Looks like you've got more fans than just me, Elias remarked, instinctively stepping slightly to the side, creating a wider field of fire if things went south, which they invariably did in his experience. The newcomers ignored him, their movements stiffly aggressive as they advanced on Quinn. This was the first hint of the despair engine cult, though Elias wouldn't know their name or their terrifying philosophy for some time yet. He just knew they smelled like serious trouble, the kind that made a simple bounty hunt look like a vacation. Quinn, surprisingly, didn't immediately unleash her sonic weaponry on them. Instead, she tilted her head, a subtle gesture, and a soft, complex series of clicks and whistles emanated from her, too intricate for Elias to understand, but the armored figures paused. It wasn't a plea or a surrender. It sounded almost analytical. One of them raised a heavy energy weapon. Compliance is not optional. This was Elias's cue. He might be a down on his luck bounty hunter, but he had a code however bent. And these new guys were definitely not playing by any rules he recognized. Plus, Quinn was his bounty. "Hey, Robo-Thugs! Get in line. She's with me," he yelled, charging forward, his good arms swinging a salvaged shock baton he'd been tinkering with. The fight was brief, brutal, and chaotic. Elias, despite his partially paralyzed arm, fought with a wild, unpredictable energy, his exuberance manifesting as daring dodges and surprisingly effective blows. Quinn moved like a phantom, her sonic bursts disorienting their attackers, her paralyzing touch used with surgical precision to disable weapon arms or lock joints. They were clearly outmatched in terms of raw power, but their unexpected, if uncoordinated, teamwork sowed confusion. During a momentary lull, as one of the armored figures rebooted from a sonic overload, Quinn spoke, her first words to Elias, her voice a low, resonant melody, surprisingly clear despite the earlier sonic emissions. "They are not here for the identity I carry. They are here for something else. Something I am." Her eyes met his, and for a fleeting instant, but he saw not a fugitive, but someone carrying an immense burden, the faint shimmer around her intensifying. Colors from some unseen spectrum dancing at the edge of his vision. The immediate consequence of their encounter was clear. They were both targets now, and their only chance was to get off Xylos Station fast. The memory thief was far more than he'd bargained for, and his simple bounty had just spiraled into a galaxy of trouble. The escape from Xylos Station was a blur of blaster fire, narrow evasions through crowded docking bays, and the increasingly unwelcome attention of the dark armored figures. Elias's ship, the Stray Comet, a battered but beloved light freighter he'd salvaged and rebuilt countless times, was their only hope. "Get to auxiliary power! I'll try to shake them in the asteroid field near the jump point." Elias yelled over the scream of protesting engines, his paralyzed arm now a dull, throbbing ache, but adrenaline keeping him functional. Quinn, strapped into the co-pilot's seat, worked with a quiet intensity, her fingers flying over controls that were clearly alien to her, yet she adapted with astonishing speed. Her sonic emitters pulsed subtly, seeming to interface with the ship's aged systems, coaxing dying readouts back to life. They punched through the station's weak defenses, the armored cultist ship hot on their tail. As they veered into the dense asteroid field, a stray shot from their pursuers clipped the comet's port stabilizer. Alarms blared, the ship lurched violently, and Elias wrestled with the controls. "That's not good. We're losing integrity?" Quinn, without a word, unstrapped herself and moved towards a damaged conduit arcing dangerously near the primary life support. The cultist ship was closing in, weapons charging. Elias was trying to calculate a desperate micro-jump, a risky maneuver even with a fully functional ship. It was then that the turning point occurred, not with a bang, but with an act that seared itself into Elias's memory. A maintenance hatch, weakened by the impact, blew inwards, exposing a terrified young maintenance worker, a kid no older than 16, clinging precariously to a twisted support strut, the vacuum of space just beyond. The kid screamed, his grip slipping. Elias was too busy too far. He saw it happen in slow motion, the horrifying certainty of the boy's death. But Quinn saw it too. In that instant, she wasn't a memory thief, or an alien with strange powers. She was just someone. She launched herself across the bucking deck, not towards safety, but towards the boy. With no regard for her own precarious position, she hooked one arm around a reinforced stanchion. Her body extended over the open void, and with her other hand, she snatched the boy's wrist just as he lost his hold. The strain on her was immense. Elias could see the cords in her neck standing out, her slender frame trembling against the G-forces and the pull of the vacuum. The cultist ship fired again. The blast rocked the comet, and for a heart-stopping moment, Elias thought he'd lost them both. But Quinn held on, her grip like iron. She managed to drag the stunned, hyperventilating boy back into the relative safety of the corridor, shielding him with her own body as debris rained down. Then, with a focused burst of sonic energy, she somehow repressurized the immediate area around the ruptured hatch, just enough to prevent total depressurization of that section. Only then did she look back at Elias, her dark eyes holding a flicker of something he couldn't name, not triumph, not fear, but perhaps a deep, resonant wariness. She had saved a complete stranger, at incredible risk, to herself with no hesitation. Elias stared, momentarily forgetting the pursuing cultists, the failing ship, everything. This memory thief, his bounty, had just performed an act of pure, selfless heroism. The image of her, suspended over the void reaching for that boy, burned away his cynicism, his mercenary calculations. She was more, so much more, than he had assumed. "Hold on!" he yelled, his voice thick with a new unfamiliar emotion. He slammed the micro-jump controls. Space-twisted stars smeared, and the stray comet, battered and bleeding atmosphere, catapulted into the unknown, leaving Xylos and the cultists behind, at least for now. They were alive, stranded somewhere, but they were together, their fates irrevocably intertwined. The forced proximity wasn't just physical, it was emotional. He owed her, and more than that, he saw her. The bounty was forgotten. Surviving, and understanding the enigma that was Quinn Oculus, was all that mattered now. The micro-jump had been a desperate, violent affair, spitting the stray comet out into an uncharted, eerily silent nebula. The ship was crippled, life support flickering, navigation offline. They had bought themselves time, but at the cost of being utterly lost. Elias fought the controls, managing a barely controlled crash landing on a small, rocky moonlet, its surface scarred with ancient, crystalline formations that glowed with a faint internal light. The impact was jarring, throwing them both against their restraints. Silence descended, broken only by the groan of stressed metal and their own ragged breathing. "Well," Elias said, undoing his harness, his voice echoing slightly in the sudden quiet, his exuberant nature already reasserting itself despite the dire situation. "On the bright side, the view is unique. And nobody's shooting at us, for now." His arm was still stiff and sore from Quinn's paralyzing touch, a constant reminder of her alien capabilities. Quinn unstrapped herself, her movements economical as always. She surveyed the cockpit, the red emergency lights painting her features in stark relief. Then, she simply sat there, her hands resting in her lap, cloaked in one of her profound silences. It wasn't a panicked silence or an angry one. It felt contemplative. Elias, for once, didn't try to fill it with chatter. He was beginning to understand that her silences had meaning, layers he couldn't yet parse. He watched her, the image of her selfless act in the corridor replaying in his mind. "That kid back on the comet." He began, his voice softer than usual. "You saved him. Why?" Quinn turned her head slowly, her large eyes fixing on his. After a moment, a low, resonant hum emanated from her, a precursor to her speech. "He was alive. His potential unwritten. To let that be extinguished needlessly is an imbalance." An imbalance. Not wrong or tragic, but an imbalance. It was a glimpse into a different way of seeing the universe. Most people would have saved themselves. Elias stated, not accusingly, but as a matter of fact. "Even me, maybe?" A faint, almost imperceptible shift in the lines around her mouth. Could have been a Chiralian version of a smile, or perhaps just a muscular micro-adjustment. "Your actions suggested otherwise when you engaged those who pursued me." He blinked. She had noticed his impulsive defense of her in the alley. "Yeah, well," he mumbled, slightly embarrassed. "They were rude. And you were my bounty. Professional courtesy." She didn't reply, but the quality of her silence changed again, this time feeling less analytical and more accepting. The immediate priority was survival. The moonlet had a thin, breathable atmosphere, but no obvious signs of water or resources. The comet's transmitter was fried, the main drive shattered. "Okay, salvager mode activate," Elias declared, trying to inject some energy into the situation. "First, let's see what's still working. Then, we figure out how to get this rust bucket flying, or at least send out a distress signal strong enough to pierce this nebula." For the next several days, they worked side by side. The forced cooperation was initially strained, punctuated by Elias's occasional bursts of frustrated energy and Quinn's quiet, methodical approach. He learned quickly that she was not just a formidable fighter, but also possessed a keen intellect. She grasped complex engineering concepts with astonishing speed, her sonic emitters proving surprisingly versatile. She could use them to generate precise vibrations, loosening rusted bolts Elias couldn't budge, or to create focused sonic pulses that diagnosed internal damage within machinery like a high-tech stethoscope. One evening, huddled around a major heat source scavenged from the ship's emergency systems, the crystalline landscape outside glowing with an ethereal light, Elias found himself asking, "So, memory thief. It's quite a title. Why him?" "That dignitary you impersonated." Quinn was tracing patterns on a piece of salvaged metal with her finger. The silence stretched, but this time Elias waited patiently. He was a conduit for the despair engine. She finally said, her voice low. He was facilitating their access to sensitive data, to sow discord and suffering on a sector-wide scale. The memories I took, they were the proof, and the key to understanding their immediate plans. The despair engine. Those armored goons. Quinn nodded. They believe suffering is the fundamental truth of existence. Their purpose is to amplify it, to bring all sentient life to a state of ultimate despair. They seek to break the spirit of the galaxy. Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with the moonlet's thin atmosphere. That's bleak. And the fail-safe device thereafter, the one mentioned in your bounty. It is a device of immense power, Quinn explained, her eyes distant. Designed by an extinct race, it can nullify all technology of a specific, highly advanced rival species. The despair engine cult believes if they can acquire it, they can trigger a catastrophic war, plunging entire civilizations into chaos and misery. And you know where it is, or how to find it. Quinn hesitated. The dignitary's memories held fragments, partial coordinates, clues that lead towards a nexus. A nexus. She looked directly at him, and for a moment, the air around her shimmered more intensely than usual. He saw, or thought he saw, fleeting images superimposed over her face, other skies, other faces, other versions of Quinn herself, all blinking in and out of existence in a fraction of a second. I am a nexus point, she said softly, the admission seeming to cost her. My existence is unusually anchored. It touches, and is touched by other possibilities, other realities. The portal they seek, the one that may lead to the fail-safe, resonates with my nature. Elias stared, his mind reeling. Memory thief, formidable alien selfless hero, and now a living bridge between realities. His down-on-his-luck bounty hunt had just become infinitely more complicated and infinitely more important. So those goons weren't just after the stolen data. He mused, piecing it together. They want you. They believe I can help them control the portal, or perhaps even become a conduit for their despair across multiple realities. The sheer audacity, the cosmic evil of it, was staggering. During one particularly difficult repair, deep within the mangled engine core of the stray comet, a support beam shifted, threatening to crush Elias. Before he could react, Quinn was there. She didn't try to lift the massive beam. Instead, she pressed her hand against it, and a complex, resonating sonic frequency emanated from her palm. The beam vibrated intensely, then, impossibly, seemed to become momentarily less dense, just enough for Elias to scramble clear. The effort left her pale and trembling. How did you do that? He asked, breathless. Focused sonic resonance, she replied, her voice a little strained. Manipulating molecular cohesion. Temporarily. He looked at her, at the quiet strength, the incredible ability she wielded, not for conquest or gain, but for protection, for balance. Trust wasn't just developing, it was cementing, forged in shared danger and mutual reliance. He also learned about Corellian justice. On my world, she explained one quiet cycle, as they watched the strange nebula drift outside the viewport. If one accuses another, the accuser must psychically experience the alleged crime from the accused perspective. All of it. The thoughts, the emotions, the intent. Elias whistled softly. Wow, no frivolous lawsuits there, I bet. Must make for a very honest society. It fosters understanding, Quinn corrected gently, not always agreement. But understanding is the first step towards true justice. He thought about that, about the stark contrast to the often brutal and arbitrary justice systems he'd encountered across the galaxy. He found himself looking at Quinn not just as an alien, but as a being from a culture of profound empathy, a culture that valued silence as much as speech. He began to notice the nuances in her quietude, the deep, listening silence when he spoke of his own past failures, the sharp, warning silence before danger, the soft, almost warm silence when they shared a rare moment of respite. One time, he accidentally brushed against her hand while passing her a tool. He flinched, expecting the paralyzing cold. But her touch was neutral, almost careful. She met his surprised gaze, and a very faint, melodic hum came from her, a sound he was beginning to associate with a lack of threat, perhaps even a nascent form of comfort. The romantic tension was an undercurrent, unspoken but undeniably present. It was in the way their eyes met a little too long over a shared problem, the awareness of their physical proximity, in the cramped confines of the ship, the way he found himself noticing the delicate tracery of lines on her skin, the strange, captivating beauty of her alien features. She was so different, yet he felt an undeniable pull. And he sensed, in her occasional prolonged glances, in the subtle softening of her usually stoic demeanor, when he made a particularly bad joke that somehow landed, a reciprocal curiosity. They were two vastly different beings, thrown together by chaos, slowly, painstakingly, building a bridge of understanding across the gulf of stars and experience. The repairs to the stray comet were a testament to Elias's knack for improvisation and Quinn's unexpected aptitudes. Days bled into weeks on the crystalline moonlet, the nebula a constant, swirling canvas of cosmic art outside their viewport. They managed to patch the hole, restore minimal life support, and crucially, coax a weak, short-range distress beacon into sputtering functionality. It was during one of their attempts to boost the beacon's signal, using a bizarre antenna array Elias had jury-rigged from salvaged sensor dishes, and Quinn's sonic emitters to focus the broadcast, that the stakes escalated dramatically. A hidden sub-frequency within the dignitary's memories, one Quinn had been meticulously trying to decrypt, suddenly resolved itself. It wasn't a location for the fail-safe, but a communication protocol, a way to contact a shadowy information broker known only as Sci-Fi, who supposedly knew the Despair Engine cult's next major target related to the portal. Sci-Fi operates through a clandestine network. Quinn explained, her brow furrowed in concentration as she interfaced with the ancient comm system. The dignitary was using this contact to feed information to the cult. If we can access Sci-Fi, we might learn where the cult plans to activate the portal, or where they believe the fail-safe is located. Elias felt a surge of his old exuberance. An info broker. Now we're talking! I know the type. Greasy, unreliable, but sometimes they cough up gold. Let's send a message. What have we got to lose, besides our lives, our sanity, and the fate of the galaxy? His attempt at levity earned him a rare, fleeting smile from Quinn, a genuine upturn of her lips that made his chest feel suddenly lighter. The message was sent, a carefully coded query. The wait was agonizing. Days passed. Their meager supplies dwindled. The hope ignited by the repaired beacon began to flicker. It was during this tense period that their connection deepened. One cycle, Elias was recounting a particularly disastrous salvaging job from his past, a story filled with exploding reactors and double-crossing partners, ending with him barely escaping with his skin and a mountain of debt. He told it with his usual self-deprecating humor, but Quinn listened with that profound, empathetic silence of hers. When he finished, she didn't offer platitudes. Instead, she reached out, her fingers lightly brushing his arm, the one she had paralyzed weeks ago. This time, there was no cold shock, just a gentle, reassuring pressure. A soft, melodic trill, almost like a bird's song, vibrated from her. Your resilience, she said, her voice unusually warm, is a remarkable frequency, Elias Wrench. He stared at her, momentarily speechless. Her alien compliment, phrased in her unique way, touched him more deeply than any conventional praise could have. I just try to keep bouncing. He stammered, feeling a flush creep up his neck. It's better than sinking. Later, Quinn experienced a wave of disorientation, the shimmering around her flaring violently. She stumbled, clutching her head, images flickering in her eyes too fast for Elias to comprehend. He rushed to her side, steadying her. Quinn. What is it? What's happening? The nexus, it's unstable here. She gasped, pain lacing her voice. Too many echoes, too many paths crossing. He helped her to a seat, feeling a surge of protectiveness. He didn't understand her condition, not really, but he understood her distress. He stayed with her, offering what little comfort he could, simply being present until the episode passed. As she recovered, her breathing evening out, she looked at him, her eyes filled with a vulnerability he hadn't seen before. Thank you, Elias, she whispered. Your exuberance. It's a steadying anchor in the flux. He managed a shaky grin. Anytime, Oculus. We're in this mess together, remember? It was a simple statement, but it felt like a vow. Their bond was no longer just about survival. It was about something more profound. A connection forged in shared hardship and growing affection. He found himself admiring the elegant curve of her neck, the way light caught the subtle iridescent sheen of her skin, the intelligence that shone in her dark, expressive eyes. He was falling for her, this extraordinary, enigmatic alien who was so much more than she first appeared. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. One evening, as a particularly beautiful aurora danced across the nebular sky, Elias found himself confessing, for a memory thief who can paralyze people with a touch and shatter plasteel with her voice, you're surprisingly gentle. Quinn turned from the viewport, the colors of the nebula reflected in her eyes. Is that a contradiction in your experience? Most beings with power like yours, Elias said carefully, aren't shy about using it. Or they let it define them. You seem to wield it with such restraint. Precision? Power is a responsibility. Quinn replied, her gaze unwavering. Its use defines the user, not the other way around. My people believe that true strength lies not in the capacity to inflict harm, but in the wisdom to choose otherwise. Her words resonated with him. He thought of all the times she could have used her abilities to dominate or escape, but had instead chosen cooperation or selflessness. Then, the comm system chirped. Cipher had responded. The message was terse, encrypted, and demanded an exorbitant fee for information, payable in rare isotopes Elias knew they didn't possess. Well, that's a problem. Elias sighed. We're broke, stranded, and he wants a king's ransom. Quinn, however, was looking at the decrypted message with a strange intensity. The payment is a distraction, she said slowly. The true message is hidden within the encryption itself. A Chirelian linguistic cipher. He knows who I am. Or what I am. Her fingers flew across the console, her sonic emitters generating a complex series of clicks and tones that interacted with the data stream. The screen flickered, and new text appeared. The despair engine cult is converging on the serene Elysium. Quinn read, her voice tight. A luxury starliner. They believe a critical component for activating the portal, or perhaps the fail-safe itself, is present there during a trade summit. They plan to take the ship, secure their objective, and make a statement. Luxury starliner? Elias repeated, his blood running cold. That's a lot of innocent bystanders. Indeed, Quinn said, her eyes meeting his, a grim understanding passing between them. Cipher's message also contains a back-channel access code to the Serene Elysium's public manifest, and a single passenger ticket booked under a false identity. For me? For you? Elias felt a pang of something. Jealousy? Fear for her? What about me? Quinn's expression softened almost imperceptibly. The ticket is a trap, Elias, or a test. Cipher is playing a dangerous game. But the information about the summit, it feels genuine. The cult will be there. And if the portal, or the means to control it, is there, then we have to be there too. Elias finished, his jaw set. We can't let them succeed. But how? Quinn asked. The stray comet can barely achieve orbit, let alone make a jump to wherever the serene Elysium is. Elias grinned, a spark of his old, reckless exuberance returning. That, my dear Nexus Point, is where a good old-fashioned, desperate, probably suicidal plan comes in. We might not have isotopes, but we have ingenuity. And each other. He looked at her then, truly looked at her, and the words tumbled out before he could stop them, raw and honest. Quinn, what you did for that kid, what you are, it's... He trailed off, fumbling for words. She reached out, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw, a touch that was now incredibly gentle, sending shivers down his spine that had nothing to do with paralysis. I know, Elias, she said softly, her voice a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through his very bones. I feel it too. In the dim light of the cockpit, surrounded by the silent majesty of the cosmos and the wreckage of their ship, their lips met. It was a kiss unlike any he had ever experienced, tentative at first, then deepening, a fusion of human warmth and alien coolness, a silent conversation more profound than any words. It was a promise, a declaration, a leap of faith in the face of impossible odds. The despair engine cult was waiting, the fate of countless lives hung in the balance, but in that moment, all that mattered was this unexpected, extraordinary connection, a spark of love ignited across the stars. The plan was, as Elias had predicted, desperate. They used the last of the comet's functioning maneuvering thrusters, and a precisely calculated slingshot maneuver around the moonlet's parent gas giant to fling their battered ship towards the nearest barely charted trade route. Their hope rested on their weak distress beacon being picked up by a passing freighter before their life support gave out completely. Quinn, using her sonic abilities, focused the beacon's output into an incredibly narrow, high-intensity beam, pulsing it with a specific Chirelian distress signature she hoped might be recognized by any long-haul Chirelian or allied vessels. Days turned into a tense, oxygen-thin vigil. Elias, ever the optimist, tinkered with a broken datapad, trying to sketch out potential layouts of the Serene Elysium based on generic luxury liner schematics. Quinn spent much of her time in a meditative state, the shimmer around her more pronounced, as if she were trying to sense the pathways of fate, or perhaps glimpse the cult's intentions through the chaotic weave of the nexus. They are driven by a profound emptiness. She murmured once, her eyes closed. They seek to make the universe mirror their own internal void. The thought was chilling. It wasn't just about power or control for the cult. It was a twisted philosophical crusade. Finally, just as the CO2 scrubbers failed entirely and Elias was starting to see pretty, sparkly dots that weren't stars, a gruff voice crackled over their comms. Unidentified vessel, this is the freighter Last Chance Saloon. We're picking up your distress call. You folks alive in there? Relief washed over Elias so powerfully he almost wept. Alive and kicking, Last Chance Saloon! And very, very happy to hear your voice! The freighter captain, a gruff but ultimately decent Tellarite named Grok, was initially suspicious of their story about engine trouble, but was persuaded by a combination of Elias's fast-talking charm and Quinn's unnervingly calm, direct gaze dollars, and perhaps the sight of their genuinely wrecked ship. He agreed to take them as far as Port Calliope, a bustling trade hub that was, by sheer luck, a scheduled stop for the Serene Elysium before its summit cruise. The journey on the Last Chance Saloon was cramped and uncomfortable, but it gave Elias and Quinn time. Time to talk, to plan, to simply be together. Away from the immediate pressure of survival, their connection deepened. Quinn, sensing Elias's unspoken curiosity, began to share more about Chirelian culture. She described the vast, silent libraries where knowledge was absorbed through resonant frequencies, the communal meditations that aligned entire cities, and the profound respect for the interconnectedness of all life. We believe that every action, every thought, creates ripples, she explained, her fingers tracing patterns on the viewport, which looked out onto the swirling hyperspace conduit. Individuality exists, but it is understood within the context of the whole, like a single note contributing to a vast symphony. Elias, in turn, told her about Earth, a planet she knew only from historical data cores. He spoke of its chaotic beauty, its bewildering diversity of cultures, its art, its music, its flaws, and its enduring, often irrational hope. He tried to explain human concepts like romantic love, loyalty born of choice, rather than societal obligation, and the fierce, sometimes self-destructive, drive for personal achievement. Quinn listened with an intensity that made him feel truly heard. Your species is a vibrant cacophony, she observed, not unkindly. So many disparate frequencies, yet sometimes, they harmonize in unexpected ways. During one quiet shift, when Grok was snoring loudly in his bunk, and the only sound was the hum of the freighter's engines, Quinn turned to Elias. The identity I carry, that of High Prelate Vorlag, she began, was not merely stolen. It was absorbed, his memories, his knowledge, his access codes. He was deeply enmeshed with the Despair engine. I took his place to disrupt their operations from within, to gather enough evidence to expose them. So you were an undercover agent? Elias asked, impressed. Of a kind. My people do not typically engage in such direct interventions. But the threat of the Despair engine, their potential to harness transdimensional energies, it required an unconventional response. She paused, a flicker of pain in her eyes. To absorb a mind so steeped in nihilism, so dedicated to suffering it leaves scars, even on a Chirelian. Elias reached for her hand, his fingers lacing through hers. You did what you had to do. You're incredibly brave, Quinn. Her grip tightened almost imperceptibly. Bravery is simply acting despite fear, Elias. You have shown me much of that. They arrived at Port Calliope, a chaotic, multi-species hub throbbing with activity. The Serene Elysium was already docked, a colossal vessel of gleaming white and gold, dwarfing everything else in port. It was the epitome of opulence, a floating city dedicated to pleasure and commerce, and soon a potential slaughterhouse. Using Sephir's ticket, Quinn, disguised in elegant, flowing robes that subtly concealed her Chirelian physique and features, boarded the starliner. Elias, using credits he'd persuaded, groped to advance him, promising a hefty cut of a non-existent salvage claim later, managed to secure a low-level service crew, passed through shadier contacts in the port. His plan was to get aboard, find Quinn, and then, well, they'd figure out the then part. The trade summit was due to begin in 2 days. They had little time. Reconnecting aboard the massive starliner was a challenge. Elias, disguised as a sanitation worker, navigated the labyrinthine service corridors, while Quinn, posing as the enigmatic Lady Eris Thorne, from a minor noble house, moved through the luxurious passenger decks. They communicated via tiny, encrypted comm beads Elias had modified. Quinn's mission was to locate the cult's primary target. Was it a person, an object, or information related to the portal or fail-safe. She used her heightened senses and the residual knowledge from Prelate Vorlag's memories to identify potential cult members among the passengers and crew. Elias, meanwhile, mapped out critical systems, security checkpoints, ventilation shafts, emergency escape routes. His salvager's eye saw not luxury, but vulnerabilities. He discovered the cult had already infiltrated the Starliner's security, replacing key personnel. Their takeover wouldn't be a random attack, it would be a coordinated strike. The night before the summit, Quinn sent an urgent, coded message. They are targeting the Xylosian delegation. Specifically, a data crystal they carry. It supposedly contains navigational charts to a stable transdimensional rift, the portal. The Xylosians, Elias muttered. A reclusive, technologically advanced species. Their tech was rumored to be impervious to most forms of interference. The fail-safe the cult wanted was designed to shut down tech from a rival species. Could the Xylosians be that rival species? Or were they merely guardians of the portal's location? The summit's opening gala is tonight. Quinn's voice continued, tight with tension. In the celestial ballroom, that's where they'll make their move. The cult leader, a being known only as Malachor, is reportedly on board, overseeing the operation personally. All right, Elias said, his heart pounding. Time to crash a party. He had already stashed a small cache of improvised weapons, stun grenades, a modified plasma cutter, his trusty shock baton in a maintenance locker near the ballroom. Their preparation was as complete as it could be. Now, they had to face the storm. He met Quinn in a deserted botanical sky garden, the artificial stars twinkling above. She was breathtaking in her formal attire, but her eyes held a warrior's resolve. Are you ready for this, Elias? She asked, her voice a low thrum. He took her hands. As I'll ever be, just stay close, and try not to paralyze me by accident this time. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. I will endeavor to aim my biological inconveniences at more deserving targets. He leaned in and kissed her, a brief, fierce affirmation of everything that had grown between them. For love and new life, right? He whispered, echoing the half-remembered motto of some old resistance group he'd read about. Across the stars, she completed, her eyes shining. They were no longer just a bounty hunter and his target. They were partners, lovers, and perhaps the galaxy's only hope against the encroaching darkness of the despair engine. The celestial ballroom of the serene Elysium was a spectacle of ostentatious wealth. Crystal chandeliers like frozen supernovas hung from a domed ceiling displaying a simulated, impossibly vibrant starscape. Beings from 100 species, draped in jewels and silks, mingled, their laughter and chatter a fragile veneer over the simmering political tensions of the trade summit. Elias, now disguised as a waiter, tray in hand, scanned the room, his eyes missing nothing. He spotted the Xylosian delegation, tall, slender beings with opalescent skin, their faces hidden behind intricate visored helmets. They kept to themselves, a small guarded knot near a holographic waterfall. Quinn, as Lady Aristhorn, moved with an ethereal grace through the throng, a wine flute in her hand, her senses stretched to their limit. She could feel the subtle dissonances in the room's energy, the faint, acrid tang of ill intent from certain individuals. She identified several cult operatives, disguised as guests or security, their feigned nonchalance a thin mask over their predatory focus. The summit's host, a portly Regelian ambassador, was just beginning his welcoming speech when the lights flickered and died, plunging the opulent ballroom into sudden, terrifying darkness, punctuated only by the emergency exit signs. Screams erupted. Then the calm, chilling voice of Malachor echoed through the darkness, amplified by the ship's internal address system. Esteemed guests of the serene Elysium, your revelries are concluded. You are now participants in a grander design. The age of hollow joy is over. The era of profound truth, the truth of suffering, begins now. Red emergency lights pulsed, casting demonic shadows. The main doors slammed shut, sealed by magnetic locks. Cultist shock troops, clad in their signature black armor, emerged from hidden alcoves and service entrances, their weapons trained on the terrified crowd. Panic surged. Elias dropped his tray, the clatter lost in the cacophony. He activated his comm bead. Quinn! Status! Where are the Xylosians? West side near the waterfall, her voice came back, strained. They're trying to secure the delegation. I'm moving to intercept. Elias shoved his way through the screaming, stampeding guests, his shock baton materializing in his hand from beneath his jacket. He saw Quinn across the room, a flash of dark velvet and pale skin. She wasn't running from the chaos. She was moving towards it, a focused point of calm in the storm. She unleashed a targeted sonic burst, a high-frequency shriek that shattered the visors of two cultists advancing on the Xylosians, sending them reeling back, clutching their heads. Elias, meanwhile, used his knowledge of the service routes. He kicked open a concealed panel behind a decorative planter and slipped into a narrow access tunnel, aiming to flank the cultists attacking the Xylosian delegation. He emerged behind them, his appearance a complete surprise. "Party's over, boys," he yelled, his exuberant battle cry a stark contrast to the cult's grim pronouncements. He waded into them, his shock baton crackling, each blow delivered with the desperate energy of a man fighting for more than just his own life. Quinn reached the Xylosians just as their chief delegate, a tall, imposing figure, was brought to his knees by a stun blast. A cultist commander, heavier set than the others, with cruel, burning eyes visible through his helmet's slit, wrenched a crystalline data pylon from the delegate's grasp. "The portal charts are ours, Xylosian filth," he sneered. "Your futile resistance ends now." Before he could turn, Quinn was upon him. She didn't use a direct sonic blast that might harm the nearby Xylosians. Instead, a complex, multi-layered sequence of focused sound waves emanated from her, targeting the internal mechanisms of the commander's armor. Joints seized, servos whined and smoked, and his weapon clattered from his suddenly immobile hand. He stared at her, astonished, as his own suit became his prison. Quinn then whirled, her hand lashing out, the paralyzing touch grazing the exposed neck of another cultist about to fire on a downed Xylosian guard. The cultist froze mid-action, his expression of murderous intent locked on his face. But Malachor was not so easily deterred. From a newly opened command post on the ballroom's mezzanine, his amplified voice cut through the sounds of fighting. "Impressive, Chirelian. Your unique talents are wasted on these primitives. But the Nexus cannot save them from the inevitable." Suddenly, the floor beneath Quinn and the Xylosians began to glow with an ominous energy. Elias, seeing this from his vantage point, yelled, "Quinn, move! It's a trap!" Too late. A containment field shimmered into existence, trapping Quinn, the Xylosians, and the immobilized cultist commander inside. Malachor chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "The charts are secondary. You, Nexus Point, are the true prize. Your resonance will unlock pathways even we have only dreamed of. You will be the conduit for a symphony of despair that will echo across realities." The air around Quinn began to crackle. The shimmering at her edges intensified, and for a terrifying moment, Elias saw not one Quinn, but dozens flickering in and out of phase, their expressions ranging from fear to fury to sorrow. Her Nexus Point ability was being forcibly amplified, destabilized. Pain contorted her features. "Elias!" she cried out, her voice distorted by the fluctuating energies. Elias felt a cold dread grip him, but his exuberant defiance surged. "Not on my watch. You cosmic creep." He saw a control console on the mezzanine near Malachor, clearly linked to the containment field. Getting there was suicide. He didn't care. He fought his way towards the mezzanine stairs, a whirlwind of desperate action. Cultists fell before his shock baton, but more kept coming. He took a blaster shot to the shoulder, pain searing through him, but he gritted his teeth and pressed on. Quinn, meanwhile, was fighting back from within the field. Despite the agonizing pressure of her destabilizing nexus, she focused. She remembered Elias's steadying presence, his unwavering belief in her. She unleashed a wave of pure sonic force, not aimed at the field emitters, which were too heavily shielded, but at the very air within the field, creating a deafening, disorienting vortex of sound that battered the cultists inside and even caused Malachor to flinch on the mezzanine. This bought her a precious few seconds. She looked at the Xylosian chief delegate, who was struggling to rise. "The pylon," she gasped. "Can you interface with it? Disrupt the field frequency?" The Xylosian, understanding, nodded grimly. He clutched the data pylon, its crystals glowing. Elias reached the mezzanine, bleeding, exhausted, but utterly determined. Malachor turned, his face a mask of cold fury. Persistent vermin. He raised a gauntleted hand, crackling with dark energy. But before Malachor could strike, Quinn did something unexpected. Channeling the chaotic nexus energy that threatened to tear her apart, she focused it not outward as a weapon, but inward, then projected a single, incredibly precise sonic pulse, a resonant key, directly at the Xylosian data pylon. The pylon flared with light. The Xylosian delegate cried out as information, raw and potent, surged through him. The containment field flickered, sputtered, and then, with a deafening implosion of energy, collapsed. Quinn stumbled, momentarily drained. Elias seized the opening. He lunged past Malakor's energy blast, which seared the wall where he'd been standing, and slammed his shock baton into the control console for the containment field, smashing it to pieces. Sparks flew. Alarms shrieked. Malakor roared in frustration. "You will not deny the great unfolding." He lunged at Elias. But the freed Xylosians were now rallying, their advanced personal weaponry finally coming online, and Quinn, recovering with remarkable speed, joined Elias on the mezzanine. She faced Malakor, no longer Lady Eris Thorn, but Quinn Oculus, Chirelian warrior, nexus point, her eyes blazing with cold fire. "Your engine of despair will find no purchase here, Malakor." "We shall see," Malakor hissed, and then, to Elias and Quinn's horror, he activated a device on his wrist. "If I cannot have the portal, then this vessel and everyone on it will become a monument to true sensation." The ship shuddered violently. "He's triggered the self-destruct," a Xylosian shouted, and locked out the bridge controls. The climax was not over. They had to stop the self-destruct and deal with Malakor, who was now fighting with the desperate ferocity of a cornered zealot, his dark energy blasts tearing chunks from the ballroom. The grand celestial ballroom was now a battleground, smoke and the smell of ozone filling the air. The self-destruct timer, a crimson hologram, pulsed ominously on a nearby bulkhead. 15 minutes. Panicked, briefly quelled, threatened to erupt anew amongst the surviving guests, huddled under Xylosian protection. Malakor, a figure of seething darkness, engaged Elias and Quinn in a desperate, three-way confrontation on the ravaged mezzanine. His energy blasts were powerful, his movements surprisingly agile for his bulk. Elias, fueled by adrenaline and his unwavering exuberance, dodged and weaved, his shock baton a crackling extension of his will, trying to create openings for Quinn. His shoulder throbbed mercilessly from the earlier blaster hit, but he ignored it. Quinn, her nexus point abilities still thrumming within her, though now more controlled, used her sonic emitters with devastating precision. She deflected Malakor's blasts with focused shields of sound, created disorienting sonic pulses that threw off his aim, and even used tight sonic beams to trigger small explosions in the nearby decorative fixtures, creating diversions. "Your individual efforts are meaningless," Malakor snarled, parrying a blow from Elias while simultaneously shielding against a sonic lance from Quinn. "You are but fleeting sparks against the inevitable tide of entropy and sorrow. What prefer to call it making a difference?" "Tin pot Tarrant," Elias retorted, ducking under a sweeping energy attack and landing a solid hit on Malakor's leg, causing him to stumble. The Xylosian chief delegate, his helmet now cracked but his resolve firm, approached them amidst the chaos. "The self-destruct is hardwired from the engine room? We need to get there. My people can try to override it, but Malakor has encrypted the access codes with cultist ciphers." Quinn's eyes lit up with understanding. "Prelate Vorlag's memories. They contain deep-level code encryption algorithms. I can break them." This was their chance. Elias locked eyes with Quinn. "You go with the Xylosians. Get to engineering. I'll keep this blowhard busy." "Elias, no. It's too dangerous alone." Her voice was tight with fear for him. He grinned, a flash of his old, cocky self, though his face was pale with pain and exertion. "Someone's got to provide the dramatic distraction. Besides, you're the brains of this operation. Go save the ship. I trust you." He leaned in, giving her a quick, hard kiss. "No go." Reluctantly, Quinn nodded. The fate of everyone on board rested on her ability to break those codes. She turned to the Xylosian delegate, led the way, quickly, as Quinn and the Xylosians raced from the ballroom towards the engine room, battling isolated pockets of cultist resistance. Elias faced Malakor alone. The cult leader, seeing his primary target escaping, let out a roar of pure rage and focused all his destructive power on Elias. "You will pay for your interference, human." The fight was brutal. Elias was outmatched in terms of raw power, but he was quicker, more agile, and fueled by a desperate, exuberant refusal to yield. He used the wreckage of the ballroom to his advantage, ducking behind overturned tables, swinging from damaged chandeliers, turning the opulent destruction into his personal playground of combat. His every move was calculated to buy Quinn more time. Meanwhile, Quinn and the Xylosians navigated the smoke-filled corridors, the ship groaning around them as the self-destruct sequence advanced. They reached the heavily fortified engine room, only to find it guarded by a contingent of Malakor's elite fanatics. The Xylosians engaged them in a fierce firefight, their advanced weaponry spitting coherent light. Quinn, however, bypassed the direct conflict. She found a secondary access panel to the engine control systems. Pressing her palm to it, she sent a complex series of sonic pulses into the machinery, mapping its internal network. Then, drawing on the stolen memories of prelate Vorlag, she began to dismantle the cult's encryption, her mind a whirlwind of code and countercode, her sonic emissions a silent, intricate dance with the ship's besieged computer core. Back in the ballroom, Elias was weakening. He'd taken several more hits, his movements becoming slower. Malachor, sensing victory, pressed his advantage. "Your meaningless defiance ends now! You will embrace the despair!" He cornered Elias against a shattered crystal wall, his hand crackling with lethal energy. Any last words? Irritant. Elias, panting, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead, looked up at Malachor and grinned a bloody, defiant, utterly exuberant grin. "Yeah," he gasped. "She's probably disarmed your little doomsday toy by now." Checkmate. Just as Malachor was about to unleash the fatal blast, his comm unit, still linked to the ship's systems, crackled. A calm, clear, synthesized voice echoed through the ballroom. Self-destruct sequence disarmed. All systems returning to bridge control. Malachor froze. His head snapped towards his comm unit, then back to Elias, his eyes burning with disbelief and incandescent rage. Impossible. In that moment of shocked distraction, Elias lunged. He didn't have the strength for a powerful blow, but he had desperation. He tackled Malachor low, sending them both crashing through the weakened crystal wall and tumbling down onto a lower catering deck. The fall dazed them both. Elias scrambled up first, his body screaming in protest. Malachor was slower, momentarily disoriented. Elias saw his chance. He grabbed a heavy, ornate silver-serving platter, the closest thing to a weapon. Malachor rose, snarling, dark energy reforming around his fists. "This changes nothing. The despair engine is eternal." "Maybe," Elias grunted, hefting the platter. "But your franchise on this ship is officially revoked." He swung the platter with all his remaining strength, connecting solidly with Malachor's unhelmeted head. The cult leader staggered, his eyes losing focus, and then collapsed in a heap. Silence, sudden and profound, fell over the ballroom, broken only by Elias's harsh breathing, and the distant sounds of ongoing skirmishes as Salasian security and loyal ship's crew began to mop up the remaining cultists. The immediate crisis was over. The ship was saved. Quinn, having successfully overridden the self-destruct and restored control to the bridge, felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her, quickly followed by a surge of overwhelming concern for Elias. She raced back towards the ballroom, her heart pounding. She found him on the lower deck, slumped against a bulkhead, covered in dust and blood, but alive. The massive, unconscious form of Malachor lay nearby. "Elias!" She rushed to his side, dropping to her knees. Her hands, usually so controlled, trembled as she checked his injuries. He looked up at her, his face bruised and battered, but his eyes held that familiar, irrepressible spark. "Hey, Oculus," he croaked, managing a weak smile. "Did I miss anything?" Tears welled in Quinn's eyes, a rare display of emotion for a Chirelian. "Yo, you incredible, reckless, exuberant fool," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She gently touched his cheek, her paralyzing ability completely absent, replaced by a warmth that seeped into his weary bones. "You saved us." "Wu saved us," he corrected, his hand finding hers, their fingers lacing together tightly. Team effort. In the aftermath, as Salasian medics tended to the wounded and security forces secured the ship, Elias and Quinn found a quiet corner amidst the debris. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a deep weariness, but also a profound sense of connection. What they had faced, what they had overcome together, had forged a bond stronger than plasteel. The Xylosian chief delegate approached them, his opalescent helmet now removed, revealing a noble, wary face. "We owe you an immeasurable debt," he said, his voice resonating with gratitude. "You have saved not only the lives on this ship, but potentially averted a galactic catastrophe. The portal charts are secure. Malachor and his key operatives are captured." He looked at Quinn with a newfound respect. "Your abilities, Lady Quinn, they are remarkable. And your courage, Master Wrench, is legendary." Elias, despite his injuries, managed a slightly wobbly bow. "Just doing our part to keep the universe interesting, Your Excellency." The Xylosian then turned specifically to Quinn. "My people have long been guardians of the knowledge concerning such rifts. Your nature as a nexus point, it is something we understand, perhaps better than most. We would be honored to offer you sanctuary, and any assistance we can provide in understanding and controlling your unique state. Quinn considered this. The offer was tempting. But she looked at Elias, at his tired but smiling face, and knew her path lay with him. "Thank you, delegate," she said. "Your offer is generous. But I believe my journey for now continues on a different vector." Her gaze met Elias's, and in that shared look, their future, uncertain as it was, felt bright. Their choice to fight together had not only saved the serene Elysium, but had also exposed the Despair Engine cult's operations to the wider galaxy. The tide was beginning to turn against the darkness, and for Quinn, her actions, her individual choices made alongside Elias, were beginning to send ripples back towards her own people. She had shown that even in a society that valued the collective, the strength and unique perspective of an individual, especially one touched by the multiverse, could be a profound force for balance and change. The days following the thwarted hijacking of the serene Elysium were a whirlwind of debriefings, medical treatments, and galactic news reports. Elias, patched up and recovering with surprising speed, fueled, he claimed, by Quinn's excellent bedside manner and an unhealthy amount of sugary synth donuts, found himself an accidental hero. Quinn, while maintaining a more reserved presence, was nonetheless recognized for her crucial role. The Salosians, true to their word, provided them with passage, not to their own reclusive systems, but to a neutral port where they could decide their next move. They also shared some of their ancient knowledge about nexus points, helping Quinn to better understand and manage the strange energies that flowed through her. It wasn't a cure, for her condition wasn't a disease, but it was a framework, a way to navigate the unsettling glimpses of other realities with greater stability. During their quiet journey on the Salosian vessel, Quinn contemplated her own people, the Chiralians. Their society, with its psychic justice and emphasis on communal understanding, was deeply empathetic but also, in some ways, resistant to radical individuality. Conformity, or rather, harmonious alignment with the collective, was highly valued. Her actions as a memory thief, her very nature as a nexus point, and now her profound connection with a human like Elias, set her distinctly apart. "My people may find it difficult to understand my path," she confided in Elias one evening, as they stood by a viewport watching the star-streaked void. "They value cohesion. My experiences, they are far outside the common Chiralian framework." Elias took her hand. "Maybe," he said thoughtfully, "you're not meant to fit neatly into their framework anymore, Quinn. Maybe you're meant to help them expand it. Show them that individuality isn't a threat to cohesion, but can be a different kind of strength. A different kind of harmony." His words resonated with her. She thought of the psychic justice system. If her people were to truly understand her choices, they would need to experience her journey, her perspective. And through that, perhaps they would see the value in her unique path, the value of an individual forging connections across vast cultural and even existential divides. A short time later, perhaps a standard galactic month, found Elias and Quinn not on a Chiralian world, but charting a new course. The stray comet, or what was left of it, had been declared unsalvageable. But the Salosians, in their gratitude, had gifted them a small, swift, and very well-equipped scout ship. Elias, naturally, had already begun tinkering with it, muttering about optimizing the warp coils, and adding a decent sonic scrubber for Quinn's vocal warm-ups. He was no longer a down-on-his-luck bounty hunter. The bounties on both their heads had been quietly rescinded, thanks to some high-level Xylosian diplomacy and the galactic outcry against the Despair Engine cult. He was now an explorer, a protector. Quinn's partner, definitely. Quinn herself was no longer just a fugitive. News of her role in stopping Malachor, coupled with carefully leaked Xylosian intelligence about the true nature of the Despair Engine, had begun to shift perceptions. She had opened a discreet channel of communication with certain Chiralian elders, sharing her experiences, not as a rebel, but as one who had seen a broader spectrum of existence. She spoke of Elias, of human resilience and chaotic creativity, of the unexpected beauty found in differences. She spoke of her nexus ability, not as a curse, but as a unique lens through which to perceive the interconnectedness of all realities. The Chiralians, a people who valued understanding above all, were listening. The process would be slow, but the first seeds of change, of appreciating the profound strength that can arise from an individual stepping outside the norm, were sown. Their new life was taking shape. They had a ship, a purpose to continue monitoring and subtly countering the lingering tendrils of the despair engine cult, who, though weakened, were not entirely vanquished. They also sought out rumors of other stable portals, other nexus phenomena, not to exploit them, but to understand and protect them. But most importantly, they had each other. One evening, on the bridge of their new ship, the Nexus Drifter, Elias's somewhat on-the-nose naming choice, Quinn stood beside Elias as he piloted them through a vibrant, uncharted nebula, reminiscent of the one where they had first truly begun to connect. She was silent, but it was a comfortable, shared silence, filled with unspoken affection. Elias reached over and took her hand, his touch warm and familiar. "You know," he said, his voice softer than his usual boisterous tone. "For a lady who can literally shatter reality with a hum, you're surprisingly easy to be around." Quinn turned, a genuine, gentle smile gracing her lips. A soft, melodic chord, a sound of pure contentment emanated from her. "And you, Elias Wrench, for a man whose exuberance could power a small star, possess a remarkably grounding presence." He leaned in, and she met him halfway. Their kiss was a testament to their unexpected union. A love story written across the stars, born of conflict and culminating in a fight for not just their own lives, but for a new understanding, a new way forward. The universe was vast, filled with dangers and wonders yet to be discovered. But together, Elias Wrench and Quinn Oculus, the human salvager and the Chiralian nexus point, were ready for whatever came next. Their love a beacon against any darkness, their shared journey a promise of new life, echoing the enduring hope of connection in a galaxy of infinite possibilities. Their story was just beginning.